excited to do a special episode of Breaking Into Tech, all focused about AI. I learned about AI when I read The Future is Faster Than You Think, and it kind of opened my eyes to all this stuff that's going on, and I've been following it. And so I'm really excited to learn more about what's going on in AI, and I'm so excited to have Gregorio back to be the expert to tell us everything he knows. And feel free to put questions in the comments. We'll get to as many as we can. So let's get started. Welcome to the show, Gregorio.
Amanda, thank you for having me, and good talking to you again.
Yeah, so much has happened these past 3 months since Chat GPT launched. Can you give us a quick overview of what Chat GPT is?
Well, I don't know if it could be quick. I'll give you the first 2 minutes, right? So first off, Chat GPT is basically just the brand name that they gave OpenAI. The company is called OpenAI, and they released a new AI product, artificial intelligence. They released a new product, and they decided to slap a chat interface on it so that everyone could, begin to understand the power that was released. And so, it is at that level. It feels it is very much an event. Like this was an event in tech, the release of this software to let everybody understand what is now possible with artificial intelligence, which is another word for someone wrote a bunch of code and did a lot of work and figured out a lot of logic, such that this tool that they put in front of it, it feels really, sometimes like magic. It feels like, wow, this is kind of crazy. When you interact with the AI in front of via the chat, it feels like you're talking to someone. It knows a lot of different things. Now, its knowledge is capped at a certain point in time because they did their training up until a certain point in time. But it's quite, it really is extraordinary. And it's leaps and bounds away from where, prior incarnations of AI were, in that, out of the box, you could slap a chat bot in front of a chat interface in front of any kind of AI. I mean, look, we've worked with Siri, we've worked with, I'm going to say Alexa, and hopefully it doesn't wake up over here. There's a lot of different versions of it, and you have a lot of different interactions, but the quality and the knowledge and the feedback that it would give us was just different, right? And to some people, it's scary different. To me, it's exciting different. And so that's what, and in the last, it's actually more like 5 months, maybe 5.5, 6 months, everyone's just catching on to, like, not even everyone. A lot of people still have no idea what's going on, but people in the know, people in tech, they know this is a big deal. This is an event. And, the way we write code and the way we actually, just professionals, if you're a professional who for some reason needed their phone near them, not just their computer, right? Like, your life is now different, and it should be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you talked about AI is a part of Chat GPT, and you even mentioned like Siri and Alexa and how those programs have been around. So what exactly is AI? And like, just give us a basic definition, and then we can dive more into.
Well, again, that's I'm going to, you have to oversimplify it to talk about it in the time span of this podcast, but AI, artificial intelligence, look, even like the most basic chunk of code that you write, if you are clever about how you write it and you set up the situation, you can ask a piece of program to do a certain thing, and it does a very specific thing. So you have to be very specific about the programs that you write, and it'll do a thing. Here, they've taken the time, and they've put a lot of effort and, very importantly, a lot of money behind the training of a piece of software so that you can really go off script, right? I write a program that does 10 things. If you try to ask the 11th thing, it's not going to do anything. It'll either do nothing, or it'll get confused and maybe do one of them, and that's not what you wanted. Getting in front of OpenAI and their API and their tools, you can go off script. It gets a little interesting when you go off script. You can have some really awesome results, or you can have some really strange results. It kind of depends on what the topic is, how you formulated the question, and honestly, just a little bit of chance. Um, because behind the scenes, there's a lot of dials that you can dial up. You can basically, in English terms, you can dial up how crazy the answers are going to get, how creative the answers can get. So there's a specific dial that you're like, no, I want crazy. No, I want it to be, black and white. Ones or zeros. Give me a yes or no. Don't get creative. There's a lot of dials there for that. And so it can go off script and essentially give you responses to things that were unplanned.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I've seen a little bit of stuff in the news about some of the things that Chat GPT has come up with, and it's off script, or it takes information and kind of misinterprets it and gives you an answer that's not quite exactly the right answer, and so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So there's different versions of Chat GPT or different types. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Well, look, there's a little. Let's. It's easy to start getting confused in this world, right? Because ChatGPT came out with this chat. OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, right? So OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, and since then, there've been a number of other companies like OpenAI that have released their models for you to interact with via either a chat interface. A lot of people have, rightfully so, integrated it with Discord or integrated it with Slack so that you can have a chat interface kind of built in. So there's a lot of companies, and those companies like OpenAI, they have a specific language learning models. So they have models. They call them models, and so GPT-3 is the one. GPT 3.5 is the one that you probably interface with when you go to ChatGPT. So right, so ChatGPT is the tool produced by OpenAI, but OpenAI has got a lot of competitors. Now, it maybe didn't have it in December, but now there's a number of people who are out there saying, "Look, we're better." The biggest name there is Google in their version of this called Bard. But then, look, this is a crazy thing about this is crazy and exciting. Every day, the answer, like what I'm telling you today, tomorrow could be wrong, completely wrong. And so the biggest name that we all know in the world of search and discovery, Google, people have criticized them for being a little slow in getting here and doing what they're doing. But they just had a Google I/O conference, and basically, there was only two letters mentioned in Google I/O, and that was AI. And Bard is their main, competitor. That was the name, but if you dig down, there's other tools and things that are more specific that Google AI has now released and is releasing and is talking about releasing, is talking about planning and the release that it will come around AI. So there's a lot of different things, but Bard is the name, and it's the tool that has been mostly pushed by Google. But there are newer tools, kind of segments of tools. If you want to do X, Y, and Z, they have a slightly different kind of thing for you. But Bard is it, and you can interact with Bard. Now, big difference between OpenAI and how Bard took it, Google, is you get access to a lot more with Bard. OpenAI, they don't have the resources that Google has, so they've been a little bit measured as to who has access to all the bells and whistles. Not everybody has access to all the bells and whistles, all the plugins in OpenAI. But over here in Bard, they've apparently just opened it all up and have at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember after they did their earnings call, I listened to a podcast and they were like, this is what they talked about. It was like AI, like multiple times. And that's what and I use the Google Suite a lot. And there was a big push that came out right after that as well. And I think I have to scroll back up because there's so many comments. But Andrew said this goes really well into our next segment, which is he feels that people personally react about AI, and simply put, it has to be taught. Even if it can replace mass amount of jobs, it lacks the ability to innovate, which programs are great at. And our next question is, for developers, what do you recommend? How can they use it? How can they use this tool in the workplace, in their lives?
Well, they absolutely need to integrate it, right? And so, look, let me put this big disclaimer asterisk here. As for a living, what do? Leanna and I run Sabio, where we teach people to become software developers. This tool, um, one of the very popular tools in the AI world for developers is called CoPilot. Right. So CoPilot is something that you have to sign up for. You integrate it into your development environments, integrate it into VS Code, into Visual Studio to help you code. Right. But I really like the name CoPilot because there's something that's implied. Like if you go, if you go right now to the airport, you get in one of those jets, if there's a co-pilot there, the thing that you have to understand about the co-pilot is that there's a pilot somewhere and they're the co-pilot. They too are a pilot. And the guy that's sitting next to him, or gal, is a pilot. So there's two pilots in the cockpit. If I were to sit in one of those chairs, it doesn't make me a co-pilot, right? It doesn't make me a co-pilot. So when you start using these AI tools like Copilot and Chat GPT, just straight out, you have to be careful about how you exercise that and how you use it in your everyday. Because if you're talking about learning, which our students, this is a big topic here at Sabio, is how to the messaging and how do we integrate this into the developer day as a student. You have to be real sensitive about that because it could do the work for you, right? And in doing the work for you, you're not learning. So big, and as a student, you're gonna end up making a lot of wrong decisions as to how to use that tool. So you just got to be careful if you're trying to prepare yourself to enter the workforce. Because I'll tell you what, no matter what's going on and how awesome I think ChatGPT and Copilot are, I'm not letting someone use Copilot in these tools in an interview. That's not what's happening. So what would happen? I, as a developer, expect my developers to use every tool available for them to get better and to produce code, right? So I expect them to be a pilot, and I expect them to just like I expect someone to be resourceful and not just use Google and search. Hey, read the documentations on an API, read the documentations on a framework. Just dig into that boring stuff. You're going to live probably in Stack Overflow. But now, here's this thing that you can essentially treat like your rubber duck, right? So rubber duck and rubber ducky in software development is this concept of where, you literally have a little rubber duck. We have some rubber ducks that are branded with the Sabio logo as well. They're really cute. And kind of like sometimes you just need to talk it over with someone and no one's in the room. And so you feel a little weird just talking to yourself out loud. But so you put a little duck at your desk and you talk to the duck. Talk to chat, right? Talk to the GPT. And it will give you a lot of inspiration. It will give you feedback. Sometimes it goes a little crazy. They call it hallucinating. Sometimes it hallucinates and it tells you to use things that aren't there, right? And so you have to you have to read it. You can't just take it at face value again. So you have to have a certain level of confidence and scrutiny of this isn't just the right answer. It could be, and it could inspire you to get there, but you got to really look at it and then go back and be like, hey, this is telling me that the Stripe API has got these levers. Let's go check. And it's not on Stripe. It might have got confused with PayPal, or it might have got confused with some random Facebook API that you should be aware of and, steer clear of it. So yeah, it's like any other tool. Use it, but be careful with how you use it because you could get burned.
Yeah, that reminds me of a past interview. I was trying to remember who it was with, but he talked about when he first started, he would come to the teachers and he'd be like, I have this problem. And they'd be like, okay, how did you get to where you're at? And so he learned that he needed to start going through where's the problem? What happened along the way? And sometimes just talking through it, he could figure it out. Like while he was explaining it to the instructor, he's like, oh, this is what I did wrong. And it's the same thing. Like you can't just use Chat GPT to you have to use the information it gives you and integrate it into your process of understanding, and not just, like you said, take the information. It could be totally wrong, and if you're not understanding what you're working through, then you can get way off instead of closer to where you need to be.
Yeah, you have to really engage. It's an interesting thing to engage with when you're engaging with a bot, right? When you're not engaging with a human being, and you have to sit there and basically, essentially, either debate it, or poke it, or prod it, encourage it, coax it, because sometimes it wants to go somewhere else, and you got to bring it back. You got to reel it in, and you end up talking to it again from experience, you end up talking to it like it was a human being.
It's kind of like when you do a Google search and you put something in the thing and the results are like, no, this isn't what I'm looking for. And then you have to change the words around and like modify it so that the Google search is a lot rudimentary. It's just a good way to explain it. But like you change the words and then you're like, oh yeah, this is closer to what I want. And you keep refining it to figure out what you're searching for. The same way, like with Chat GPT, you have to refine it, have a conversation, and be able to get the information that you need.
Yes, exactly like that.
So we talked about how developers can use this, but there are ways that you can use this if you aren't a developer. How could someone who is in like a marketing job use ChatGPT or Bard?
Well, by the way, look, I've played a lot with I've played a lot more with OpenAI than the Bard guy, but again, last week when I played with Bard, I'm not the big fan of it. A lot of people want to post stuff like it's like it showed up and it was 10 times better, but it's not. And it's at least it's not for the types of questions that I was asking it, right? So you got to be careful with that. And so what was the question? I'm got lost in the AI world.
If you're not working as a developer, maybe you're doing
Oh,
marketing or some other job. How
yeah.
could
No, look,
you?
it's awesome for everything. Again, so you got to proofread, because if you're going to have the AI generate content for you, got to go in and proofread, because sometimes you probably want the language to sound a little bit human. So this is the thing, is like you can actually tell it to change the tone. So from a marketing perspective, marketing is a great use case, because you could take it and say, hey, let me feed it a document. Let me feed it a document here. Let me whole thing copy pasted from you can copy paste it from online and tell it to summarize something for you. Boom, you're going to summarize it. So now you've understood what's going on in here. You can tell it to write a blog post, read the blog post and be like, hey, you know what? I want it to be more exciting, and stress more these 3 points that, you found in there. Hit enter, boom, and it will rewrite it in a more exciting tone. Like if you want it more exciting, maybe you prefer doom and gloom about what's going on in whatever part of the world. Like you can actually just coax it into a style, into a tone, and great, and boom, it just spits it out. So you can take a document from online, have it parse it, summarize it. You can have that same document and say, write for me, not just a newsletter, right? A newsletter that's going on. Find me, if you have access to some of the plugins, you say, find me 3 or 4 other related articles. Okay, great. And then with all that content, then you can even ask it for like, hey, break it down and give me 10 tweets to share on social media. You can tell it to, again, and even with those tweets, I want 5 to be exciting. I want 5 to be doom and gloom, and make sure you include hashtags in it and links back to my site, right? You can do all sorts of that stuff, so that if you've ever had to plan out and schedule tweets for an account, it's really not hard, but like it takes time. It takes time to go and do that. And wow, to have 20 tweets drafted for you, in the tone that you want, with the hashtags that you want, with the links that you want from a particular article. I mean, talk about a time saver, right? It's quite awesome.
Yeah, and Liliana in the comments said that she used it yesterday to create an amazing cover letter for a sales engineering role. And that's like something that's repetitive and you have to do, and like the basics are there, but it's time consuming. And to have, be able to put it in AI and then spit out a thing that's, that you can use, that's pretty cool. I really like the idea of like putting in content and then being like, can you make LinkedIn posts and tweets, because it's draining as someone who does, it's like, how am I going to reward this 10 different ways? And it's like, oh, the AI could just do that for me. And I love that idea.
Yeah.
That's
So,
great.
for example, you could take the transcript from a podcast and have it summarize it for you, have you make tweets about it, and you can ask it to pick out the most exciting or controversial topics and things that were said in there. You can poke and prod it to do stuff like that, right? So you can pretend like you're like some editor in some company, and you're asking one of the people that's working for you, give me 10 tweets on this stuff, right? That's how you could interact with this guy, right? With Chat GPT. Treat them like that. Treat them like someone who's helping you get your job done, knowing that that person sometimes going to act like a high schooler and just go a little nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Still have to proofread, still have to make sure that it fits your brand and your style, but it can get you started in the right way. I love it. That's great. So how has the introduction of Chat GPT changed how you guys are teaching at Sabio? Have you integrated it into your coursework? And if so, how so?
We're in the process. We are in the process. Not a lot of everybody knows the details behind the scenes, but we're in the process to integrate this with everyday activity at Sabio. I think the first time students might have seen some of this was actually yesterday, as we integrated a tool into reviewing people's pull requests. The pull request being when a developer wants to introduce code into the repository where everybody's coding from, right? So we ran some tests yesterday that students got to look at for the first time. And again, it's just like it's a fantastic time saver where it's not perfect out of the box. You have to spend some time in training, in massaging it, in coaching it, and kind of like, again, I do feel like it's like one of my teenagers here. You have to kind of negotiate with it a little bit and, give and take to get it to kind of behave, right? It behaves a certain way, and you need it to behave a particular way. But that all comes with what you feed it, what you train it on. It's not necessary to fine tune it on. That what you get in, you get out, and so as long as you put some good content in and some good engineering into it, it comes out with some really awesome stuff. So we are going to be integrating that in a controlled manner every day into the lives of Sabio students. That's not going on today because it's still in testing. But that day is coming soon, and it'll be really great when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I love seeing that, how you're testing it and tweaking it and seeing how it fits, and just showing that Sabio is always innovating and staying on top of new technology, which I'm sure there's always new technology changing. Like you said, this interview might not be relevant a week from now. It's like everything is changing and things are just changing so quickly. So what are some things that you're seeing in the job market as it relates to AI and tools like CoPilot?
Well, what I'm seeing in what regard? I mean, so there's a lot of more positions available for, the fad and the craze a year ago was probably still a lot of crypto, right? If you go back in time, it was, it's been crypto for a while. And then, honestly, like every other good person in tech, I even forgot what was the latest craze other than the crypto thing and the crypto collapse that happened and all the terrible stuff, with Sam there. But today it's like, now we need prompt engineers and people who have experience in integrating with AI. And like every other craze and every other fad that's happened in tech, the people posting those job openings, they barely know what they're posting about, right? They're barely posting. Someone's probably asking for 10 years in OpenAI experience right now, not realizing that OpenAI and their access to it is relatively new. So to answer your question, probably more of the same of what we've seen in tech, where people are just, really getting ahead of themselves and just getting you can just feel the excitement and the craze behind it. But having more and more skills and knowledge of this tool is going to be important for companies that are there. Now, look, not every company is going to be building AI tools, but every company could be integrating it into their everyday life. And you talk to people every day. We talked to someone yesterday who's in the tech scene. They were kind of like unknowledgeable about what's going on because they're too busy with their heads down. And so sometimes it's not that you need to bring in resources that are, let's say, better, but just resources who've had an opportunity for one reason or another to get into the mix. And what you're looking to hire is just looking to hire someone who's been there, done that, to kind of accelerate a company's movement into AI, right? And so we hope that we're doing that internally right now, and over the course of the next month, to give our students more experience in interacting with those tools in an appropriate manner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because like AI seems like everywhere, but some people still are blissfully unaware of like all the things going on, and it's so it makes a lot of sense. And then it makes sense that they'd be like 10 years experience. You're like, that's not really possible. And so the next question is, what is a 10x software engineer?
So look, it wasn't too long ago someone coined that term 10x software engineer, and how they did it and how they brought it up was not cool. But the point is that there's some people who are more productive than others, for good reasons and for bad reasons. And we all want to hire someone who's more productive, right? The most productive. And if we could find someone who is, a 10x developer, maybe they do cost us 2 or 3 times, but certainly not 10 times. And that we want someone that productive. The super nice thing about AI, and again, there's good with bad, like, is that you could really take yourself, and if you didn't want to, talk about it in terms of 10x, again, because it's like it comes with a lot of baggage, that term. If you were having difficulty being more productive, then, congratulations, you should be using this and you're going to get super productive. You will get super productive. I use it. I use it because I use it just because I know that I have 10,000 things to do. I'm going to have it do some stuff for me. I have it to do a variety of different things, right? So you have to use it to make yourself more productive. You have to be more productive. And so that bar is raised. Like, the interview process is still going to be as annoying and terrible as it is, and difficult. But then when you get in the job, like, your expectations as to what your developers should be delivering can easily go up. And that shouldn't be considered a bad thing, if you're, as they say, an individual contributor on a team, because you actually have, like, someone just supercharged you, right? And why wouldn't you want to put on the turbo pack, right? To fly higher and faster. You should do that. You should do that for your team, and your managers should be encouraging you to do that, with the caveats of, like, hey, let's not put some, super sensitive information in this stuff, because if you put super sensitive information in this tool, it will send it across the internet and have it go across who knows how many people's desks who might be watching. So you got to be careful with that. Still, like, common sense. This tool does not remove common sense. Like, you still have to apply common sense to what you're sharing there, right? But as long as what you're sharing and the stuff that you're transmitting across the internet, like, is not a secret, nor should it be a secret, then you're fine. Use a tool all day long. Some companies and countries will want you to, lock down and not use these tools, because common sense and people sometimes just, escapes them, and they'll end up, communicating and sending out some really sensitive information across the internet that they shouldn't be. So if you don't live in that country and you don't work for those companies, you should be using this all the time.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't actually used it. And I'm like, man, I could use this in my business in so many ways and I would get more done. So I agree. We got to start using the tools and help us be more productive, 10x us, so that we can get more done. How is Sabio using this to help students learn how to code?
Well, today we're not, right? Today we're not, because it's in development and we're getting ready to release it, very soon. But it's going to be helping them in every day, right? So we have a lot of different aspects of our training. We have what we refer to as, like, the first part of our training, very curriculum focused. It's going to help them there. The second half of our training, we're building a team product. And as I tell everybody, like, it's controlled chaos, because it's not like a regular software team where who knows how much time we have. We got like 6-7 weeks. Everyone hurry up and let's get this done. And it's just an accelerated cycle, a software development life cycle that happens in 6 to 7 weeks. It's kind of nuts. But in there, we're going to be injecting tools, not just for students. One of the things that's very helpful is to build tools for the people that support them. And so the instructors are going to get a lot of support as well, to be able to provide the students with as much help and support. Right. So it's like help and support, not just technical support, but just, emotional support through the whole process. We're going to be doing that throughout our training very soon.
That's awesome. I love that it's integrating into like all aspects of your business, not just, helping students, but help, like Liliana said, she used it to create the job request, and like it's just being integrated in so many different ways. It's really exciting to see how things are changing and what's going to happen next. It's also a little terrifying. No. So, what are some tips for people currently on the market for a software engineering job? How can they use these tools and leverage them so that they can be a better candidate?
One of the first things that you could use it for is as that we plan to actually automate into put it into our curriculum, is to help you prepare for job interviews, right? So you can use it. You can say, hey, quiz me on React, right? You can quiz me on React, ask me a question, and ask me a series of questions. Here's my answers. And without, you have to, so then you have to be careful, because if you don't ask it the right question, it'll give you the question and the answer right away. So as far as prepping yourself, you can begin to learn how to interact with it in such a way that it will prepare you for interviews. Because the awful thing about technical interviews is that there's a million types of questions that people can ask you. And sometimes it feels a little monotonous, like how many times can I go over these same questions? It will come up with a million different questions to ask you. You could then ask it for a different difficulty level, different types of questions. So whether you want it to be design based or algorithm based or whatever, you can have it give it some topics and say, give me some questions, right? And it'll give you some random questions. So that's like probably the number one way to do it. And then the other way, right? So it's not just our instructors, but even in career services, we got to get into career services, into like was mentioned, resumes, right? The creation of resumes and the drafting of resumes and job postings, all that different things is like, how many, like, can I say this differently? How could I say this differently? It can give you that inspiration to help you kind of write that out there.
Those are two really great tools of ways to help people in the job hunt. I love the resume idea, and I really love the idea of like all the different questions that it can give you to help prepare for an interview. That's really good. I love that. There's so much cool stuff that it can do. So, what about security? What are some drawbacks to using Chat GPT code? Did you see what happened at Samsung recently?
So yeah, so I think there's a number of examples there. Again, like as I was talking about, it's going to make people nervous, and people, like companies and people in different positions. So I think it was some countries just don't like it, like don't use it, and I think countries and companies, because people just forget where you're at. Like you're not talking to your coworker. At a certain level, I would even explain to you, like talk to it like it's your coworker, but realize it's not your coworker, right? They don't work for your company. And it's never a good idea to take a secret and put it online, right? It's never a good idea to do that. Like, don't put that online. Just saying that it sounds funny. Don't share secret information with the internet, because then you lose it, and it would be very bad, right? Potentially very bad for yourself, your employer. And again, like some countries feel a little antsy about, government employees putting in there and drafting, hey, let's draft a letter to do X, Y, and Z, where X, Y, and Z is some sensitive, political thing going on. Like, people would do that. Don't do that. That's just a bad idea. So it's still common sense, right? Just like don't put all your passwords in a folder called passwords in the company drive. Don't do that, right? Like, that's not a good idea. So you still have to, don't lose your mind, folks. Like, don't forget, there's malicious people out there, and malicious people are malicious. They are going to act in a way that will harm you on purpose. So you have to protect yourself. So still use common sense.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think, yeah, we see all the potential and we get all excited, but you have to remember it is the internet, and that once that information's out there, it's out there. So you need to use your common sense when you're working with it, and remember that it isn't a person. It's the internet, and yeah, that's really important. And so, still talking about security and regulation, like from the work you have done, do you have an opinion on whether new tech should be regulated? I know yesterday, the owner the owner and creator of Chat GPT, OpenAI, was at Congress talking to them about regulation. So, is that something that you think we should be doing? Or is that a topic for another episode of AI?
Well, I think it's definitely a topic unto itself, right? They have entire meetings in DC about this. You gotta tread into it with care in both scenarios, right? Because I forget which one was the topic. There was a topic recently in Washington that was brought up about like, hey, we got to make sure someone's not like, oh, I think it was like some legislation against TikTok, and the laws that they were trying to pass were basically going to allow everybody to spy on every citizen, everyone in the United States, just because they weren't happy with TikTok. Hey, hey, you know what? We're just going to monitor your network activity from now on. How about we do that? Right. So you got to be careful when you start writing laws, and people again, the malicious people everywhere. And in an attempt to protect us against TikTok, whatever stance you is on that, do you want to give up the right to privacy in that they're going to be monitoring all your network activity? That's unintended, right? And so, can OpenAI be used maliciously? Sure, right? Sure, you could do that. But do we need to rush to create laws around it? I think we need to kind of take that a little slower than potentially is being proposed, because again, the companies are also fighting about this, right? Naturally, and Elon Musk, who was part of OpenAI, they're not necessarily besties anymore. And then Google clearly doesn't, yeah, let's slow everybody down so that we can catch up. And while we're at that, I mean, who has more lobbying money than Google? Got to be careful. So yeah, it's not a bad idea, but like let's not do something rash on either way. And for me, I'm a little biased. I'd rather go a little rash with the let's let AI grow and flourish before we try to put a harness on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely see with lawmakers getting involved, they could A, not understand it, B, be influenced by lobbyists, or C, just, kind of like you said, go too far, like swing the pendulum too far one way where it stops progress altogether, or, gets into like, yeah, I don't want people to be looking at all my stuff just to try and stop TikTok. Like, that's too far one way. So those are all really good points. So, yeah. Thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. There's been so many people commenting in the chat about how they're excited about the future of AI, different programs that they're using. So if you're watching this episode, make sure to go and look through the comments and see what everyone's talking about. And if you have more questions about AI, feel free to put them in the comments. We might do another episode like this, so your questions would be great in helping us know if you guys want that. And so thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks for being on the show.
Amanda, thank you so much. You have a great day.